So I will officially say hi, everybody. I'm Dave Sutlefadius. I'm one of the officers in the local Green Party, the Green Party of Monroe County, and currently I'm secretary of the local party. But I've run for office locally 4 times, run a number of campaigns, and worked on campaigns both at the local, state, and federal levels. Um, the top we're going to talk about gun violence today, with the hopeful ambition of maybe getting some action items going and getting some things that we can do. And because this is the Green Party, we are a political party. We do swing into activist circles as well. We're one of the interesting third parties where we don't just run candidates. We are, for to give you an example, the Green Party is of Monroe County is one of the groups that's been involved with the Police Accountability Board Alliance pretty much since its inception, since its beginning. So we run people for office, we work on platform planks, we advocate for ideas, and we also run people for office as well as doing, activist stuff. So we're hoping to take a slant today of talking what can politicians do to help with gun violence. And I thought maybe as facilitator, and we don't have a specific agenda, would be a good idea to start with, let's just kind of figure out why there's gun violence. And then the second half can be, great, what do we do about it? If we can, I just figured if we stayed focused like that, we can still be free enough to be creative, but at the same time have a little bit of focus so that by the end, we have a list of things that we can actually do. And who knows, maybe someone in this Zoom room will be inspired to run for office. I know y'all looking at me like I'm crazy. I get it. I didn't think I was ever going to run for office too. Now my wife thinks I can't stop. So, all right. How about if we go around quick and do some introductions, if that's all right? Usually when we're in a room together, we're in some kind of a circle and we do that. I just started myself. I live in the city of Rochester. I'm a teacher and I've run for office a number of times. And if you don't mind, I'm going to just call on the first person I see on my screen, if that's all right. I hope you don't mind. And the first person I see is Julie.
Okay. My name is Julie Clayton, and I'm a retired teacher from the Rochester City School District. I taught actually adults, a lot more adults in the district than kids. And I taught for many years, like 15 years at the county jail downtown through the city school district. And when I retired, I'm retired, and I taught a lot of kids at that point, kids in high school, just any age, and also adults. And I've been president of the Burroughs Audubon Nature Club, which is a nature club nearby. It's in Pittsford, and I've been on boards of Metro Justice a while back, Golden Link Folk Singing Society, a couple of organizations, and also I was on the board for the correctional facility in Willard for a couple of years. But anyways, when I think about politics and everything, if I was a few years younger, I think I would really like to run. I'm 71 now. I know Joe's, 79, our president. But I also have MS. I'm not, really badly afflicted with MS, but I have it, and I get fatigued, and my right leg's a lot weaker than the left. But anyways, I think running for politics would have been great in my younger years. I could see that it was probably a good idea, but I don't think I could do it now. But I'm willing to help out in different ways.
Great. So Julie, you want to call on somebody who's next to you?
Brian. Who is Brian? Oh,
Brian.
I see Brian. Okay.
Hi, I'm Brian. Use he. Any pronouns are acceptable, though. I'm a math grad student at Washington State. I've been in the party, I think, since 2016. I changed the Green Party. And I have a little bit of experience. I was in the DSA for a while. I've also organized with some other relevant left-leaning groups relevant to this discourse. So the Socialist Rifle Association I was involved with. Yeah, that's it. I'm really just here to listen and hear more about, I trust the Greens to discuss this in a way, and I really want to listen to what I have to say, because it can be upsetting to hear a lot of the modern discourse. So yeah, I trust the party to I'm really excited to be here.
Cool.
Michelle, did you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Michelle. I'm not in the party. I'm just interested in talking about gun violence in a productive way. Starting with, we should probably define gun violence at some point. But yeah, I'm a student. I'm in California. I'm just a math student.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Do you guys want to call someone?
Right next to me, I see Connie.
Cool. Connie, you're muted.
Okay, there we go. Allergies are killing me right now. But anyways, yes, I'm from Rochester, New York. I live in Brockport. My cousin Deborah brought me and educated me on the Green Party. And, oh, I gotta sneeze. And that's where I'm at now. I'm not very actively political. I'm disabled and have a lot of time on my hands, and I'm getting a little bit more involved in getting to know what the news is going on, and just what needs to be addressed around our areas and the world. Okay, I'm good, but yeah, so that's me. I just want to learn and see what. I'm sorry.
You're okay.
What can be done.
Gesundheit.
All right. I see Linda. You want to go next? I see you next to Connie on my screen.
Yeah, so hi everyone. Nice to be here. This was my first time to a Green Party meeting, but I've been, following the Green Party in Rochester on Facebook for quite some time and been meaning to come to a meeting. And I guess the opportunity to talk about gun violence was my, the impetus for that. And so, yeah, I'm a retired women and gender studies teacher from St. John Fisher College. I also taught at Brockport SUNY, a little bit of teaching at U of R. And I retired in order to dedicate myself to the climate emergency, basically. So at about the time I retired, I founded a chapter of Extinction Rebellion in Rochester, and I'm trying to grow that chapter at the moment. I've also, in terms of climate activism, been involved and a co-founder of Declare Emergency, which is operating out of Washington, DC right now. They're a nonviolent civil disobedience group who are blocking roads, demanding that Joe Biden declare a climate emergency. And I've sat on the roads with them twice now, and well, actually during 2 iterations, and have gone to jail twice for that. I've also been a part of Rock DSA, a co-founder of Rochester Mutual Aid during the peak of the COVID pandemic, and just yeah, really happy to be here. And yeah, I appreciate Dave's initial way of kind of introducing the topic of gun violence in terms of what causes it. I think that would be a really terrific segue. And so happy to be here, and I'm going to pass it on to, I'm not sure who came in after me. I think it was Chris.
That works.
Okay. I am Chris Eads. I am co-chair of the Green Party of Monroe County, along with Bonnie Cannon. We have male and female co-chairs. I have been involved with the Green Party for quite some time. I've recently sort of ascended to a leadership position here. I guess I've run for office many times before. I've run for school board and county legislature. So I may know something about what politicians can do. I haven't actually won any elections because I run as a third party candidate. But I have, I'm an aspiring politician. So I hope that I can contribute positively here. Although as chair, I will sort of take a backseat and let others discuss. And I will pick Jason Youngbluth to go next. Jason.
Okay, everyone hear me now? Okay. So hey, how you doing? Thank you, Chris. My name is Jason Youngbluth. Also a longtime member of the Monroe County Green Party. I think I'm probably the impetus for this particular conversation since I began talking to both the local party as well as the party in Erie County about gun violence following the slaughter at the Tops Market in May. And that is one of the things I hope we'll be able to touch on today is a conversation about just what is and is not working as far as gun violence, especially in regards to these outrageous massacres that just keep coming one after the other. To that point, if you'll check the chat, you'll notice two things. One is that I will be ducking out at 8:30 if we go that long to go to another Zoom meeting on this very topic. This is a conversation which hopefully will feature Delilah Barrios, who is running for governor in Texas on the green ticket. She's very interested in gun control following the Uvalde massacre. And so anyone who feels like showing up, they don't have to show up at the crack of 8:30, but if things wind down here and you want to pop over to yet another green conversation on guns, the link is right there in the chat, as well as an editorial I wrote that it's a little windy, but if you scroll halfway down, you'll find my prescriptions for what I think a new Green Party agenda concerning gun control ought to be. And that's the sum total of my reason for being here today. So I will then kick this over to, have we heard from Fred? Is he there?
I'm here.
Okay.
I am Frederica. I've been green since I was 18, so more than half of my life. I am an architectural historian. Before I worked in architecture, and I was a lead AP and did one of the green schools in Maryland. And yeah, my aunt killed herself by a gun. So obviously I want to eliminate gun violence.
Great. Is there someone you could pass it to, or do you want me to call on someone?
How about Melissa?
While she's unmuting, I'll just tell folks that we have a tradition in our meetings at the end of the meeting to go around, and if anyone has any announcements of any actions that they know of or anything that's going on, we get a chance to go around at the end, if just in case you're in another group and you're dying to let everybody know about something that's happening really soon. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Dave. Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm a very old and dear friend of our host, Dave Sublets, ADS, he, him. I am she, her. I don't know. I'm not very Zoom savvy, so I don't know how to change my name on it anymore than I already have. I don't have any of the awesome, cool credentials that so many of you have. And I feel like, oh, wow, I'm in a room with a lot of people who know things, which is exactly why I'm here. Because I'm a resident of the city. I'm one of Dave's neighbors, actually. And I'm very concerned about the heightened amount of violence in our city. I'm an unemployed artist. I'm extremely left-wing leaning. I'm currently a Democrat, but honestly, it's just to vote in the primaries. Other than that, I am a Democrat in name alone. That is the only reason. I have a 21-year-old son. I worry about his future. Yeah, so I'm really mostly here to learn, and yeah, I'm really happy that Dave, you reminded me to join.
All right, pick someone.
Oh, who have we not heard from? I don't know who we haven't heard from
I see
yet.
Jennifer's face. Jennifer.
All right, then it's Jennifer. There she is. I see her. Yay.
It was perfect timing because I just arrived where I was going. So my name's Jennifer Keys, and I've known Dave for a few years. We used to work together. And I am totally green at heart, but I am a registered Democrat because I have run for public office, and where I live, third-party candidates don't ever get on a ballot. I have served on my village board and also run for school board and town board, and currently I am running for assembly in the 139th against Steve Hawley, and that 139th includes Brockport, even though I don't live in Monroe County. I do work in the city of Rochester. I provide mental health services in the community, and so this is a very important topic across the board. And I have no idea who hasn't gone yet. So
Okay, I can see it. Anisha.
Hi. Okay, so I'm Anisha. I don't live in Rochester yet, but I'm moving there in 3 weeks for college, which is very exciting. I don't know anything about the Green Party. It's just that I was on my Green team in high school, which I very much enjoyed. And I also like my government class that I took senior year. So I thought I would just find out what the Green Party is all about today.
Well, Anisha, I'll tell you what, for anybody who wants, I can talk about that forever, but I'm not going to. At the end, though, if anybody has any Green Party questions, I mean, Chris can answer too, even Jason, more than happy. Our other co-chair, Bonnie Canan, is having difficulty getting in. Not because of me, but she's sending messages saying she's having trouble getting in. So, but we have tons of folks here who can answer questions about the Greens at the end after we're done with our discussion. Awesome. Sheila, how about you? We just got a couple more people. She might be multitasking. Rosalind?
Hello, my name is Rosalind, and I'm a resident of Rochester, and I happen to see the advertisement on Facebook, and my main and only interest is hearing other people's thoughts or ideas on how we can stem this violence that's going on in the city. So, I'm not affiliated with any particular party. I'm registered, like Melissa said, as a Democrat, just so I can vote in the primaries, but I can't be pegged into any category. So, but I do care very much about the violence happening in the city and want to come up with solutions. We all know there's a problem, but I only want to concern myself with solutions. And I know it's going to take a multi-pronged approach to dealing with all of this. So looking forward to hearing what other people think.
Great, thanks. Sheila, are you available? Okay.
Yes,
yet.
I'm
There you go. I guess that was the big intro. Okay, why don't we go ahead and just get started? Is there anybody who would like to be the person in charge of dealing with the stack? Which means when you have something that you would like to say, you can literally raise your hand. There's the Zoom electronic raising your hand. You could even put something in the chat, although that's difficult for people who are just on their phone to see. Any way you can get, on that. But is there anyone who would like to keep track of the stack?
I can keep track of stack for you, Dave.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure.
And with that, I'll be facilitator or vibes kind of person, but with that, is there anybody who off the top of your head, you're dying. Why do we have gun violence? Whether it be in our area or our country or however you would like to define it.
Excuse me, Dave, before you guys get started,
Absolutely.
I'm gonna have to duck out because my allergies are really getting to me pretty bad.
No problem.
So if you could send me notes on the meeting, how it went, I'd appreciate it so much.
Sure. And this is being recorded, so this will be on our YouTube, and we'll have the link on our social media as well. So we will
Okay,
totally send that out as
beautiful.
well.
Thank you
Yep.
so much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Connie. Feel better.
Nice to meet everybody. Thank you so much.
Okay,
So
so Brian.
I'm chomping at the bit to jump in, but I wanted to raise my hand and I can't seem to find the button. So sorry if I'm being rude.
It's in the reactions.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Oh, okay. Wait. No, that's the. All I see is clapping hands and thumbs up.
There should be a bar that says raise hand right at the bottom of that.
Maybe it's my setup. I don't know. Anyway, I'm just raising my hand then.
Okay, go, Jason.
All right. Well,
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
let's
Thank
go Brian and then we'll go Jason.
Brian first.
I just wanted to say that question was asked at the beginning, and I immediately thought of kind of the three things you think of when you think of crime, right? So you have a method, you have a means, and you have a motive, right? And those are the three underlying things that need to be present in order for these events, for these people to carry these things out. So, and I'm not sure if I have that 100% right, but you might look at things, you know, talking about the setting, talking about the access to the firearms, and then talking about the motivations. So I think broadly, it feels like those are the three things that I think that if you were building a case, that's what the way they would approach that, right? But again.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Jason, followed by Jennifer.
Thank you very much. So my particular interest has been less of recent, of late, I should say, has been less of regular gun crime, which in itself is a problem, and more with the specifics of these massacres. But I mean, there is a connection between them, and I think that that connection has to be faced directly. And the problem is that we just allow people to have guns willy-nilly in this country. This has been the way it's been for a long time, but my personal opinion is I think if we actually want to address gun violence specifically, not crime and not violence, but specifically the phenomenon of gun violence and the fact that we are the most, in every measure, we're the most violent and criminally violent Western nation, but we are within like the top three, maybe number two, just behind Brazil, of crimes committed with guns around the world. I think Chris recently wrote a piece, an editorial. Maybe he could post a link to that in the chat. It's a bit of a counterpoint to the one that I posted, but he mentions that for instance, in Japan, Shinzo Abe was just assassinated, and Chris's opinion was that this was really an indictment of any attempt, of any effort that one could really reasonably make to control guns. Because at the end of the day, if a crackpot can construct, you know, a MacGyver weapon out of duct tape and firecrackers and use it to assassinate a prime minister, then you really can't stop gun crime, I believe was my takeaway. But it's important to recognize the difference between Japan's sense of gun control and our own. Obviously, there are big cultural differences, but let's face facts. Look up the stats on Japan's gun crime deaths. There are double digits and less per year. Sometimes less than 10 per year. Sometimes upwards of 50. In America, we have upwards of 100 gun homicides every day. Another 100 woundings and maimings, and I think another, you know, double-digit number of suicides committed with guns. And that is directly attributable to the fact that we basically will give a gun to anyone with a credit card number in this country. So to sum up, the approach that I think the Greens really ought to take into serious consideration, especially now that the Safer Communities Act has just been passed, and that is probably the last bit of substantial federal gun control we can expect for a generation, because they basically telegraph that this is it. We're not going to be doing anything more. And as a matter of fact, the Safer Communities Act contained no provisions to deal with anything concerning the massacres. There was a bunch of random stuff, but nothing that really addressed the kind of violence that prompted it. When you take a look at that, you recognize that this is all the Democrats and Republicans are going to be giving us likely for a generation. It becomes imperative that we recognize that the real problem with gun violence is guns, and that we need to be behind real serious restrictions on selling guns, on the number of guns people can own, on the types of guns that may be sold. And as far as I'm concerned, that also has to include going after retailers, not just manufacturers, not just the industry broadly, but actually going to where the rubber hits the road. The retailers who arm these terrorists are also a part of the problem, and they have to be treated as our enemy.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. We're going to go to Jennifer and then on to Chris.
Actually, I was really just clapping about what was said before Brian said it. And I would just add, I think, words matter, and that's not something that we talk about enough.
Jen, can I ask you to go clarify that a little more? What do you mean, words matter?
So when we look at stuff like the shooting in Uvalde, in Buffalo, there seems to be a pattern, right? And some of that pattern, I think, is fed by a lot of the rhetoric at the national level. That, I'm sorry, I apologize. I didn't make it to the gym today. I'm on the bike. It's fed by the hate-filled speech that we seem to have a proliferation of lately. So I think words matter, and we don't talk about that enough.
All right, Chris?
Yeah. So I don't want to make it required reading, that we read everyone's Medium article. So I do recommend reading both mine and Jason's articles, but I think for the purposes of this meeting, I think, well, what does cause gun violence, right? I mean, I don't think that access to guns causes violence. Right? I don't think that somebody is not inclined to commit violence and then they find a gun and then it turns them into a violent person, right? There's a motivation that comes before the access to weapons, whether it's a gun, whether it's a knife. The baseball bat is actually the most common murder weapon in this country. The problem is that people want to kill other people. Something goes wrong in their minds and they feel like they want to do harm to other human beings. And that's, I think where we need to focus on. I think we live in a sick society in many ways. The society that we have is not built to meet our human needs, and it's not built to meet the needs of the planet either. We're very alienated by a sort of capitalist economic system that we have, and we don't take care of each other. We should be providing food, shelter, and healthcare, especially mental health care, for free to everyone, and they should have access to that. And there was just, definitely with regards to like your mass shootings, right? That's a serious mental health issue. Somebody just wants to take a gun and kill a bunch of people. But we also have to look at the more commonplace violence of, crime, for instance, in the city. That's motivated by poverty, by lack of access. Not just, if you don't have enough food or you don't have money for rent, you may want to use violence to obtain the money to pay for those things. But also, people face hopelessness and alienation, and they don't feel like they have any future. And that makes them more likely to commit acts of violence because their concern for the consequences is less. So I think that's really where we need to focus. We need to focus on what cause what takes place in someone's mind that makes them think that an act of violence against another human being is the thing to do. And I think that, creating a society where we provide the basic necessities for everyone is going to be the most effective way forward. Over.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So we're going to go Dave, then we're going to go Brian, and then we're going to go Michelle.
In the interest of having a progressive stack, I'll just pass for now. If that's right, I can go to Michelle.
Okay, so I would just, this is why I brought up earlier is like we should talk about what we mean when we talk about gun violence. Like we should define that. So this point doesn't really stand for like talking about massacres, but I would just like to talk about how Chris was like, oh, having access to guns doesn't cause gun violence. I would disagree with that a little bit just under the context of suicides, where when you talk about like suicides, and this is more research specific to women, but women tend to be, if we're going to commit suicide, it's going to be an impulsive suicide. And so I would say access to guns in that case does cause a violence. It is going to be an impulsive suicide. And it is something that's like deeply personal to me because I'm like, I have never committed suicide because I never had access to a gun. So I think that is like something that should be considered when we talk about gun violence, but I also appreciate that this is not necessarily the same topic as like massacres. And in that like regard, like I don't think that's something as easily like legislated, but there are like solutions to that in terms of like how we train people to sell guns. Like with impulsive suicides, usually you can stop this by training gun sellers to be like, why are you selling this gun? What is your motivation for this? And people will usually have like signs for that kind of situation. But that is the point that I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, so thank you. We're going to go Brian and then Jason.
Pass to Jason.
All right, thank you very much. So I wanted to address the 2 points we just heard. Chris's point about if we want to talk about gun violence, not necessarily gun massacres, but the phenomenon of gun violence, he points out that as many intelligent people would, how do you get to the root of the crime, the despair, and things like that that precede violence? I think there's an avenue for dealing with guns that is a method of gun control, but that also deals with that as well. And I know that Chris and I have differing philosophies about the virtue of gun control itself, about laws restricting gun access. So that's just a matter of our taste. But I think that the fact of the matter is, I believe that ultimately gun violence leads to more gun violence. The phenomenon of the kind of crime that can only be committed with guns. I mean, all kinds of murders and robberies and such can be committed with other weapons, but guns just make it super easy. They give someone the ability to kill at a distance. They give the ability of someone to kill multiple people at a distance. That's the unique feature of guns versus a baseball bat or a knife. They depersonalize violence, and of course they're the tool of choice of maniacs because it allows them to basically, arrive at an elementary school with godlike power in their hands and then commit murder that is extreme, that puts them at a remove from it. I think these kind of crimes, whether it's massacres or liquor store robberies, when they're facilitated with guns, they create the phenomenon that just demands more guns. The liquor store owner needs a gun to protect himself from the gun-wielding thief. More police officers, more heavily armed police officers are called upon to be created in response to maniac shooters. Then the politicians tell us that we have to put guns in the hands of teachers. And I think you can see, multiply this by every type of gun crime, you see how this escalates and escalates. And the only people who are profiting are the gun industry. Meanwhile, we're dropping like flies. So I think if we're going to talk about questions of how a sick society, and I agree with Chris that we're a sick society on multiple levels. If we're going to deal with the sickness, I think it's just as fair to try to tear up the roots of that sickness at the level of guns themselves as it is to try and address it with mental health or with social alienation, because they're all of a piece. And I think, and I'll sum up quickly here, I can certainly imagine a situation where the Green Party, if we were to really sink our teeth into this issue, that alone could start to attract people who might feel alienated, who might need a sense of purpose. They could put that, they could feed that need to find purpose by addressing the gun issue or any number of issues that the Greens deal with. But certainly, certainly by committing to gun control and putting an end to the ease of availability of high-powered weapons to people, we could start to reduce the follow-on violence that comes from the frequency of gun violence in the first place. I think it's a chain reaction that we can actually sever the link at a weak point by controlling guns themselves.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Jason. I'm just going to go into the chat and mention a couple of comments here. So Jonathan has said perhaps we could train gun sellers to ask people, why are you buying the gun? Fred has said, I would add to Michelle's comment that DV fights are often escalated and are impulsive gun violence. And from Brian, Michelle here again, I appreciate you bringing up the point about DV because that is my other main concern about guns. And yeah, Dave, unless there's someone who hasn't spoken yet, going to stack, please. Okay. Yeah, so I think I have my hand up at the moment.
Are you on stack, Linda? Are you?
Here we go. I'm in stack. I just want to kind of, with the Edie's point there about what happens in someone's mind before, if we could kind of get on to that. I think that presumes that people are rational and know in advance of the time that they're going to go and commit an act of mass violence, that can be articulated and prevented beforehand. But I think that a lot of gun violence is spontaneous. It's at the moment. It happens just because people are at the end of their tether, and it can be very, very unpredictable. So that's something I would kind of throw in to that. I also wanted to draw attention to the fact that I think there's a big difference between mass shootings and, for example, gang violence. And I don't know whether this should precipitate different approaches to gun violence, but it's white men at the moment that are doing most of our mass shootings. So I really think we have to take gender and race into account. If you look at all of the mass murders, recently they have been by very young, many of them in their young 20s, aggrieved and angry young white guys. And so what are we gonna do about that? Yeah, I think I'll stop there. Thanks.
Me?
Dave?
Okay. So I want to point out something too. So we're recording this, and I am jotting down some notes as well. And something that I'm realizing is that no one has said anything here that is like just so like outside of out of reality that like someone's way off. And one of the things that I impart to my students, to the point to where they get sick of it, is our schools, our education systems like to make it look like there's a right answer and a wrong answer, and that's it, right? We're looking for that date. We're looking for the answer, the one answer to the equation, and that's it. And from what everybody has said so far, it's all of it. There is no one solution. There is no one cause. There's the angry white men who are shooting multiple people, and then there's somebody in a street in Rochester who has a beef with somebody else and tries to solve it with a gun, and they try to get back with a gun. And there's some overlap there. There's some Venn diagrammy kind of things there, but it's not all just one thing. So I'm hoping that when we get to some of the solutions that we can do as a local entity, because this is the Green Party of Monroe County, and the whole thing, what can our politicians do, that we can focus on many things, not just one thing. I'm trying to be short, but I will just say this one thing. I'm skipping ahead a little bit. One of the ideas that I did have in terms of solutions, like there was a local alliance of different groups that got a police accountability board established, and it took years to do that, and it was the work of many people who were representatives from many groups. There was one goal: getting this police accountability board. If there was something like that for violence, there isn't just one solution, so it would be a little bit more difficult, but totally doable. But there's just no one thing. So I'm just hoping everyone's coming into this with what you've said is legitimate, but it's not the only thing. And to attack this is really going to be, I shouldn't use the word attack. To deal with this is going to take multiple facets and multiple people and groups doing different things. And that's me. I'm done.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So Brian just pointed out in the stack that several of the speakers have brought up the same point of concern about impulsivity when it comes to gun violence. And next on stack is Jason.
Thank you. Good. Hopefully I don't appear to be hogging the attention, because I'm just bringing up things in response to what other people are saying, but I'm sure we'd all be grateful to hear from some of the people who haven't spoken yet. So quickly, 2 points. One, there's just as far as what causes shootings of any certain variety, something that I think was greatly ignored in the recent Buffalo-Uvalde situation is that the shooting in Uvalde was absolutely a copycat of Buffalo. I think we've all seen this happen many times in the past. A mass shooting occurs, and some other unbalanced person uses this as his excuse to do the same thing. I don't believe I heard any conversation from the politicians who were working on that bill that just passed that recognized that this was a copycat killing, or even address the idea that perhaps gun sales should at least be suspended following a high-profile massacre, to do just what some of the people here had recommended, which is ask the person buying the gun, what are you buying it for, especially one of these combat weapons. So that's just an element that I thought should be pointed out, is that the phenomenon of copycat killing is something that can be addressed, but it doesn't seem like anyone's paying attention to it at the highest levels. And then to what Dave just said, he concurred that we all have similar ideas about what the problem is and various approaches. He asked what can be done and how can we, what different facets can be assembled into a whole. I would like to point out something that myself and Chris have been engaged in, as well as some other people here. And that is, I have been in conversation, we have been in conversation, I should say, with Sandy Prisbalack, who's, I don't know if she's co-chair or the secretary of the Erie County Party, but we got in contact with her right after Buffalo. And then we are doing our best to converse with people in the Texas Party as well. The goal being that New York and Texas should issue some kind of joint statement regarding the mutual Buffalo-Uvalde massacres. I mean, it's getting a little bit past the freshness date of the topic, but this is something we've been working on since it occurred, which just goes to show you how difficult it is to get something done, even in a party as eager to do things as the Green Party. But that is something that we're working on, and we're reaching a point right now where we're just about ready to put pen to paper and articulate what that joint statement should be. And it could really use a boost from the people in this room, because what will have to happen after this is crafted is we're going to have to get the state committee, the New York State Committee, to get interested in moving this up the ladder and co-signing to this statement and getting Texas involved. So what I'm going to ask the people here to do, if they are willing, my email is in the chat. If anyone would like to get some information following this conversation about what they can do to contact members of the Green Party at the state level so that we can get this joint statement, which will include some concrete ideas about what the Green Party ought to do, please just email me and say, yeah, I'd be interested in hearing some more about this, and I will send you some information about what this this coalition of local parties is going to be putting together. And it could really use a boost from anyone who really wants to take this issue and move it forward and get the Greens to do their part, so we can get other more powerful interests doing their part as well. So please, after the conversation, anyone who would like to just drop me an email and I'll get back to you with what we end up writing down.
Thanks, Jason. Could you also pop your email into the chat? Mike has just asked you to do that. Dave?
Well, just as a technical point, if you came in like later after it was originally posted, it won't be in the chat for you. So that's just a Zoom thing. That's not a us thing. That's so Jason, you'll just need to re-up. There you go. It's back in.
Okay. So Mike, you're next. I'll just mention Chris's comment in the chat, which is in other countries, the media doesn't give mass shooters attention 24/7 like we do in the United States. So Mike?
That was a great point that you just read, though. I was just kind of sitting with that. I like the what Jason brought up, his point about copycat killings, and the same type of mimicry is seen. You know, we talk about mass shootings, but the same type of copycat killings are seen in poor neighborhoods. When you're talking about a culture of like what they see the popular rappers doing, or how that is perpetuated through cultural through appropriating that culture, and the suspension of gun sales after a mass shooting is also I think a brilliant idea. I just had a question about the objective of the joint statement. Of course, you know, we definitely want to spread awareness about these issues of violence, gun violence, but what would be the objective of a joint statement between like Texas and New York State? And then lastly, I wanted to say to thank you guys for hosting this. We've had a couple of gun violence, Save Rochester has had a couple of Save gun violence forums, but I think this is a little bit more purposeful in that you have a clear objective of like, what can we get politicians to do, which is a very interesting question, which is why I'm here actually. So I know that we run a nonprofit, and we can't be influence legislation so to speak, but I'd be happy to help in any way I can with what you guys are doing.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So Jonathan popped a comment into Stack. I think the gun violence bill that got passed could do with a few improvements, but I don't know how to express the improvements. Maybe an emphasis on mental health and or making it tougher to get a gun license. I don't have anybody else in Stack right now, but Jason has raised his hand. I will discuss the joint statement. Julie, would you like to go?
I just want to say that was a great idea to do the joint statement. So I'm going to get Jason's email there and see what else it could be about. But I do want to stress what Michelle had said earlier about suicides. And she was seemed a little apologetic, like, oh, just suicide, you know, it's just one person at a time. But you have the mass shootings, which is horrible, especially with children. And then you have suicides, which happen all the time. And the percentage of killings by suicide is very, very high. So I think that's something that, you know, needs to be addressed too. It's violent and it's just horrible stuff because guns are accessible. So I just want to bring up that point, that it's a very, the whole suicide thing. We've all known people who have committed suicides, and it's plentiful. It's a huge percentage of the deaths caused that way. So thank you, Michelle, for bringing that up.
Thank you, Julie. We're going to go Fred, and then we're going to go Chris.
I forget who said it exactly, but they said it's like a specific demographic. What are your guys' thoughts on raising the age for gun ownership to 21 or 25 or something like that?
So I would say that the human brain is not fully developed until 25, and that we expect an awful lot of our fellow humans who are not 25 years old. And I think that that's a good idea, but I think that we also have to explore a lot of other things if we're looking at that.
Okay.
I'd like, if we could, I'd like to just have a couple more minutes to talk about the reasons for violence, just because knowing that there's the congressional hearings I know some people want to go to, and Jason has his other meeting that some people might want to go to, and we want to get to the potential action items. So I just want to, I mean, if someone has something they're dying to say in terms of the reasons, I'd like to, if we could, start focusing on, as facilitator, some solutions, some ideas. We are the Green Party of Monroe County, the people who are putting this on. And if we do, when we get somebody into office, it'll be local because this is a county party. So while we don't have to keep this to just local solutions, like a lot of the shootings that are happening in the city of Rochester are done with illegal guns, and making the restrictions to buy one more tough is great, but it's not going to, again, like I had talked about before, there's more than one reason. So if we could start, like, let's just start brainstorming, and let's have that attitude, like there's no such thing as a bad idea here, and we'll just write them down. We'll write them down, and towards the end, we'll see, okay, what do we want to do about it? But if you don't mind, let's just go ahead and let's just start talking about some solutions.
Okay, Brian.
Hi. So I wanted to mention two things, but they're related. One, considering some of the things that we've said, there has been a hamper on research information. There's I'm not sure how clear of a picture we can get, but that picture could be a lot clearer. And we know that, and that's due to some of the health regulations and some of the ways that has been managed through Congress. They've prohibited research and things like that. So that's been a major issue historically, and continues to be. And on the other side of this, looking forward to solutions, I would like to say that I'd like to mention the existence of surveillance and surveillance technology as a concern for a variety of reasons, and all of the concerns that exists within capitalism. And just say that I feel like I should be outraged because I know that this surveillance goes on and exists, and it's safe to assume, it's certainly safe to assume we're capable of using it to prevent and identify these things better, but it's not being used in that manner. And so I'd like to express that kind of intellectual outrage. anyway.
I know other people on a stack, but Brian, I just need clarification for my notes. Research about what?
Oh, so yeah, so I think it was the CDC or other, research on the causes and implications of gun violence, solutions to gun violence. A lot of that research has faced major, public health issue has been impeded, which it's made it very, very difficult to, and yet on the other hand, there's other concerns that come up, but primarily it's the public funding has not for this research it's been partisan, right? Okay. It's not been a unified, our country has not thrown its organizational weight behind it. And what they do know, if they do know things, certainly keeping it, not in the academic sphere.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I just needed to clarify.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. We're going to go Melissa and then to Jason.
Sorry, there's a fly buzzing around me. It's driving me nuts. So if you see me do that, that's why. Hi. I was just, okay, so Dave, since you mentioned like you're just like, hey, just throw some stuff out. So I figured, hey, I can throw something out without having any super duper knowledge except for the knowledge of raising a child and all that. I really feel like I feel kind of discouraged by everything in the world right now, and partially I think because a lot of the problems that happen really start right from the start of when this child is, before the child's even born, before we're even born. How are we taking care of the mother? How is the child's parents being taken care of? How it starts with this simple of like, we have to start valuing those lives once somebody decides they're having a child. We need to start valuing that person and that life and making sure that person has everything they need to make sure that child can come into the world the best way they can. And if they don't have the needs, then why don't they have those needs? Other countries can do it. I lived in Finland for a year. I realize it's a much smaller country, but it is a democratic socialist country. So I did see how they took care of their people there. And nobody goes hungry. Everybody has food. If you're poor, they give it to you. They don't have the homeless problem as much as we have here. It's not perfect. None of it's perfect. But anyway, I think it really just starts with that. Because I mean, I'm not the perfect mom, but at least I had support. I had some general education and knowledge. I don't even have a college degree or anything, but I still have some general education and knowledge to know like how to teach my child how not to fight, like how to have a proper disagreement. And he's not perfect, but I will tell you he's pretty good at it. He might even be better than me, to be honest. So yeah, I really think it really starts right from when somebody's pregnant. How do we make sure that they're okay? If they had all of that, if the kids had all of that, then they wouldn't feel as much like they need to shoot each other. I don't know. Again, I don't have the education some of y'all have, but that was my 2 cents.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. Jason, you're in stat for causes of gun violence rather than solutions. I don't know whether we should go to Chris because he wants to put out a talk about solutions, or just go on with Jason. What do you think, Dave?
Well, if it's about causes, we can maybe circle around back to it.
Actually,
Okay.
my point is it was more towards solutions, so it was a bad choice of word.
Okay, go Jason, and then Chris.
Okay, so going back to what a previous speaker said, I think one of the things that needs to be said about guns in our society basically has to do with the problem of mass production on any level. If you produce too much corn, you still need people to eat it. So that means you're going to start putting corn syrup in everything so that you can consume the corn. By the same token, if you have the machinery in the industry to produce unlimited number of guns, sooner or later, you're going to have to flood the market with guns to the point where even maniacs are being handed them. So I think when we talk about what the solution is, we have to recognize that that is part of the cause too, is that in a capitalist society like ours, we produce more than we can consume. And so we have to create more consumption on every level. And that means that sooner or later, as people point out, there's like 5 guns for every person in this country. Ultimately, the wrong people are going to have to get their hands on guns and use them. So a solution then would be just to recognize that by allowing the retail of guns in the way that we do is a guarantee for these massacres. Both Peyton Gendron, the Buffalo mass shooter, and Salvador Ramos, the Uvalde shooter, both of them bought their guns over the counter. No questions asked. One Salvador's was, or Ramos, I should say, was a copycat. No questions asked. So a solution ought to be saying that we have to put tight restrictions on sale of gun. Hopefully, I don't sound like a skipping record, but that is an undeniable fact. Is that if you're going to have so many guns floating around the country, of course they're going to wind up in the wrong hands. And so a solution has to be halting the manufacture, halting the sale. Okay, I'm sorry. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Chris?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I'll respond to kind of briefly to Jason's point, because it's there's actually is a law that makes it illegal to file a civil lawsuit against a gun manufacturer, and the reason for that is because of the U.S. military. Because the U.S. military said that if we allow that, there won't be enough guns for us, right, for our soldiers. And so that is why you can't sue a gun manufacturer. And I think that, if we want to, the problem of mass production of guns, I think, starts with the Pentagon. It starts with the attitude that we have that we're going to take the whole world at the point of a gun, and make them do what we want, or, get the world's natural resources such as oil. We're not going to put a dent in the mass production of guns until we give up on militarism in this country. And that's also part of the whole cultural change, right? I mean, unfortunately, it's not a solution that we can implement in Monroe County. That's something more of a federal issue. I mean, to bring it back to solutions. But I think it's worth mentioning. Here in Monroe County, I mean, as I've said, my focus is on what motivates people. I think people should get mental health treatment. I think that we need to teach people better ways to resolve conflict as well. As I think it was Melissa, I can't see people's faces anymore. I think Melissa was saying that. We have to teach them better ways to deal with conflict. So in terms of what we could do here in Monroe County, I think I would have a two-pronged approach. I think we need to, expand access to services such as mental health services to people. That's actually more of a county issue than a city issue. And I think, and we do have programs to sort of teach people conflict resolution. And I think, that we should, I don't know at this time how effective they are. But that's something that we should look into and look to expanding those programs, which have been proven successful. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chris. We're going to go to Dave in a minute. I'm just going to read out a couple of things in the chat here. So Fred, to everyone, Jason, we need to remember these young shooters have hardly lived in a time when the USA wasn't in a war. The military contracts are subsidizing the gun makers. How can the government stop citizens from killing innocent people when they set a terrible example themselves? From Jason, Fred, here. Brian, I like Mike's idea of banning gun sales after shootings because of violence mimicry. Some suicides are also mimicry events too, and I could see banning guns for a time period being useful to prevent suicide. Okay, I'm going to go to Dave now.
Was there anybody else in line to speak? I'm trying to go last.
Yeah, Mike's got his hand up.
Then
I'll be really brief.
I'll pass.
really
I'll
brief.
wait. Yeah.
Yeah, so I love the focus on being solution oriented. So I think that part of what we should be doing is like analyzing how we're looking at people who are committing crimes, because a lot of us think that we're absolved of going down to our lowest nature and killing someone. But I think that if we were put in the right conditions, we would all be capable of murder, especially if we have a gun immediately accessible. And then you add in alcohol, you add in drugs, you add in all of these things. So I'd like us, to, in our approach, stop looking at people who commit crime as like maniacs or guns getting in the hands of the wrong people, because I think that kind of doesn't exist for all the reasons I just mentioned. But I love how I think it was Chris mentioned that we need to focus on conflicts. A couple other people said we need to focus on conflicts. I agree. And then also, I think it was Melissa who said that if we start very early on with teaching esteem and these types of things, I also think that's a great idea as well. And if I could say one overarching solution, I think would be PPP, and that's not the loan. And by PPP, I mean programs, and programs. So I know that there is data-driven curriculum out there. The problem is a lot of it is antiquated. We're still dealing with the old gun violence of the, early 90s or the, mid 90s. And we haven't really been innovative in our approach to make sure these, to determine the efficacy of these programs and make sure that they are still producing the outcomes that they were 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I just want to, can I just say something about this idea of guns getting into the hands of the wrong people? Kind of behind that concern seems to me to be that the wrong people are usually people with disabilities or kind of mental issues and psychiatric problems. And yet, if you look at the stats, it's those people that are less likely to go out and commit a mass murder than anybody else. And in terms of, that there's gun control and greater gun checks, that the fact is that I think that these people that are getting access to guns and seem to be slipping through the system and getting their permits are these white men that don't outwardly present themselves as having any kind of mental illness. So they're getting guns really, really easily. Whereas I think perhaps gun owners might be a little bit more inclined to question somebody, a person of color or a female or somebody with a disability. So I think, and with just regard to programs, I'm not sure that programs attract necessarily the right kind of people that should be going for programs. So how do you, a lot of people are attracted to going to programs and enrolling in programs, particularly, I guess I would say minorities and people who have been oppressed and repressed in certain kinds of ways and are kind of into self-growth and knowing more about themselves. But in terms of getting a lot of these white men with traditional masculinities, toxic masculinities, would just go, fuck, I'm not going to go to any program. Why would I go to something like that? It's not going to help me. So really the programs you're talking about may not be attracting those kinds of people who are committing mass murder at the moment that really need to be engaging in the programs. Thank you. Jason?
Well, all right, Jason's died. No offense, I won't wait for Jason because he's talked
Oh.
a lot too. Then I'll be not patient now. Jason, go after me. Yeah, and again, back to my point of how there is no one problem here. There is no one demographic. There is no one, which means also there's no one solution. So many at a federal level, state, and local level in terms of the Green Party, almost all of our candidates tend to run on some kind of platform, some ideas around that are anti-capitalist. And while they might not use that the same terminology, but it does tend to bring in an idea that our societies need to be more communal. And folks who have grown up in generational poverty, right, just see more generations in their future of being in poverty. And a lot of the Green Party's platform at every level and our candidates really focus on dealing with that, and that it hopefully will not only stem gun violence, but will help deal with domestic violence and any other kind of subcategory of violence you want to talk about. That this idea that, you know, the winners have and the losers don't, and that if you're in that spot, that you're a loser, no matter how many rags to riches stories you see on TV. The way we're trained to think everybody can be president and everybody can be an astronaut and all this other stuff, that's really not the way our society's set up. So my focus on solutions would be more toward making our society a little bit more communal. That can be anything from using tax dollars to create cooperative businesses where all the workers own the businesses, to setting up urban farms so that people can have the kind of job or career or owning part of that farm where it's something that's getting back to nature, where it's something that it's communal. And just having that kind of environment. We don't all have to wear tie-dye shirts like Chris. I took the night off from wearing mine, but yeah, we kind of need to hippify our stuff, hippie it a little bit, where we all need to be a little bit more communal, and so that idea of hopelessness, it doesn't just so pervasive that that's all you see in your future because that's all you've seen in your past. So I can give specifics. I've run for office on them. I'm not going to do that here, but that's, I think, a focus of making sure that, like, piggybacking on what Melissa said, is that people have the basics, that they live with dignity, that they don't have to feel that if someone just treats them badly, the solution is to kill them, because that's just the way our society is right now, that I've been so wronged, you have to die for that, or else I'm a punk. I got middle school students in Geneva who have that attitude. So, and I had students at Franklin last year, middle school students who have that attitude. And fighting solves everything, whether it's with a gun or a knife or just their fists. Fighting solves everything. Okay, I'm done for now.
Can I start?
Sure.
Okay. So I concur with everything Dave just said, and it also brings to mind, it was a graphic novel, I think it was called something like Fist, Stick, Knife, Gun. I want to think that that's the name, and it's a personal memoir, really well illustrated by a cartoonist I know named Jamar Nichols. Anyway, it's about the but it's not his story. It's the story of the author, who talks about his experience growing up, the progression from just fighting with fists to fighting with guns in his neighborhood. It's a really good book, graphic novel, not too long. Again, I think the name is Fist, Stick, Knife, Gun. Look it up, and if anyone wants to get a perspective on this very topic, told in a very creative way, I would recommend it. I agree absolutely with what Dave said, and I think that that a big part of what the ultimate solution is the spirit of communalism and breaking us out of this cycle of violence, where the thing that made me think of the book was what he said about his middle school kids, where, you know, young people, especially young boys, you know, they're bursting at the seams they're young bucks, you know, they need to They need to fight. People are picking fights. Some people are bullied, but often there's just a lot of adolescent aggression. That's part of the nature of being boys, especially. But when guns are part of the mix, it becomes what ought to be just kind of a rough and bruising rite of passage becomes a hideous nightmare when people who ought to be learning how to settle problems either diplomatically or at the very worst with fisticuffs, to use an antiquated term, they end up somehow getting guns in their hands. And this leads me to the point that I really want to get to, which is that in a society like ours, maximal gun ownership will lead to maximal gun crime. There is simply no getting around the fact that all the other problems notwithstanding, the problems of alienation, poverty, lack of a sense of future, and so on, which are all very real, of course. But the bottom line is, if you're going to have a society like ours that puts a gun in everyone's hand, those guns are going to be used. And a society that would recklessly put guns in the hands of people is going to be the kind of society that generates crime out of necessity, just to keep the gun cycle going. So there's really, the point I want to get to then is I think it's kind of a green attitude to think in terms of anti-capitalist or communalism type ideas in the abstract, but the gun culture, the gun manufacturing, the gun market, the flood of, the undeniable surplus of guns in our country is part of that capitalist problem too. And whenever we talk about gun crimes, whether they're massacres or suicides, one-off crimes, or people who are just flexing and then things got out of control, the common denominator is the guns. We cannot have our cake and eat it too. Maybe in generations past, where the most powerful types of guns had yet to be developed, where very few people own more than one gun, where there was just less of a culture of owning guns and having too many guns. Maybe then we could have nipped this problem in the bud and said, okay, well, maybe we need to begin to build a new culture where gun education or something like that takes place at a younger age. But we live in the moment. We live right now in the 21st century. And the fact of the matter is, I think America has proven that we can't be trusted with our guns. I have no delusion that, or no illusion that the Second Amendment would ever be repealed in my lifetime, or that taking care of guns the way I would like, it would be anything more than an incredible lift. But I'd like everyone here to just imagine 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, these massacres, and I'm not trying to deny any other types of gun violence, but let's use the massacres as the exemplar of how far off the cliff we've fallen. These massacres are going to continue one after the other, and nothing short of massive gun restriction can possibly address any of the gun problems, because the nature of the gun problem is that we are too irresponsible with guns. And we let everyone have them, and we say no to any kind of restriction. All this violence that we're talking about is going to continue nonstop until we recognize that the common denominator is our lax gun laws, and that we simply have to take care of this right at the source, and the source are the guns themselves.
I just have a question for Jason, and then we'll go to Chris. So you said max gun ownership will lead to max gun crime. I guess I'm just wondering, are there stats out there to back that up? Like, we know that there are an incredible amount of guns in the United States. It's something like 4 per person. So how many guns does that make in comparison to how many actual gun crimes there are? Is there a stat that can back that up? And the other thing is just about suicide. I have a lot of friends that have committed suicide, sadly, and none of them were by gun violence. I've had a couple of friends who have overdosed, have hung themselves, have driven themselves off roads and hit trees. So I feel that, banning guns or controlling guns is not necessarily a solution for suicide. Chris?
Actually, I've got to duck out, and I did want to answer your question before I do. But Chris, would you mind if I just?
No, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, I'm just going to post the link again, the Zoom link to the other conversation. Don't feel any need to leave this conversation because this is going great. I really wish I could stick around, but I've got other obligations with other greens. So there's the meeting. Feel free to join if and when this wraps up. We're starting soon, and I don't know how late we're going to be going, but anyone here is welcome to visit. As to the question of stats, the only statistics that I mean, the short answer, I don't want to be glib, is no, I don't have any stats. Hold on a second, let me silence my alarm here. But the bottom line is, if you give me 1 second, there we go. The bottom line is this. Let's use Japan again as the example. Japan has incredibly, by our standards, by almost any standards, incredibly strict gun control regulations. You have to be certified mentally well. You have to justify your need for a gun before, I think, a judge. If you own a gun, it must be turned over it cannot be inherited like it is in this country. It has to be returned to the government and destroyed, I believe. Very strict gun control laws. And the results speak for themselves. Japan has between 10 and 50 gun crimes a year. We have 35,000. Those are the only stats that you really need to know. We have a preposterous amount of guns, and we could stop manufacturing guns today and there would still be enough guns to last 5 generations, even with rust and decay as a factor. But we keep making them and we keep making them, we keep selling and we keep selling them. I think the only proof you need about my statement of max gun ownership leads to max gun violence is that we are a society with just about close to the maximum possible gun ownership, and we have 35,000 gun, I believe they're gun homicides. I don't even know what the full stats are for all gun-related deaths, including suicides and maimings. So I think those stats just speak for themselves. Canada would be good too. Japan, 50 gun crimes a year. Us, 35,000. Do the math. So anyway, I didn't mean that to sound snarky, but I think those numbers they tell the whole story. Anyway, I'm going to have to take off. I'm super glad. Chris and Dave, thank you very, very, very much for conducting this. I've been sort of nagging them for a while to get a conversation going, and they came through, and I'm very glad to talk to all of you. I'll put my email one last time in the chat. If anyone wants to, hold on a second, let me just type it. Okay, if anyone would like to know more stuff about the joint statement, especially what I think it can accomplish, or wants to follow on with points that were raised here, I would certainly be happy to fill you in and keep you connected with the other Greens as well. But in any event, thank you very much for letting me gab. Now someone else can suck up all the oxygen in the room. But it's been my pleasure to talk to you all, and I will say goodbye now.
Okay. Thanks, Jason. Chris. Bye, Jason.
No, yeah. So I just I do want to echo something that you said, Linda, I guess, and that suicides are not, it does, are not going to go away if we deny people the ability to get guns. Actually, I haven't put a lot of thought into it myself, but honestly, an overdose is probably an easier and less painful method if you're determined to kill yourself. And that's another thing. It's all too easy for people to get their hands on. But what reminded me of, and I kind of wish Jason was here because I'm sort of responding to him with this, is that in China, right, they have people go on stabbing sprees, right? So they don't have access to guns, but if they want to kill a lot of people, they take a knife and stab people. And that's, I guess, better in that they can't kill as many people. But as a public policy goal, I would be uncomfortable saying, well, let's convert these into stabbing sprees and call the job done, right? I mean, that's why I want to focus on mental health and conflict resolution and the things that get people to that position that they're at, because we can make an improvement, but we can't solve the problem that way. If people want to commit acts of violence, they'll find a way. Over.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Brian?
Yeah, we've just run up against this topic several times, so I wanted to kind of name the I think the thing that we're discussing when we do talk about gun control. What hasn't really been mentioned is the idea, like the details of that, right? So it's one thing to restrict new gun purchases. It's another thing to disarm the already very well armed populace, where there is at least a gun for every person in the United States. So that is one hurdle to contend with on the means side of this equation, and it's been significant, right? It's been so the stat is 400 million guns, so more guns than people, and those are I don't know if those are all the lawful ones. I think there are other hurdles in some of the solutions that we were talking about. I just want to mention briefly, I think it was Linda who mentioned the if you have mental health interventions, that, and I'm going to say penetration, actually getting that where it needs to go, seems like that was an immediate hurdle, and that was something I hadn't thought of. So I'm really glad you brought that up. And there were a couple more in mind, but it sounds like we're kind of moving in this phase where we can talk about, yeah, these are potential solutions, but there are some significant hurdles. And, how do we as a party express our commitment to the solutions in a way that's political feasibility? And I hate saying that, right? I just throw myself out a window, or not joke like that. I line myself against the wall, okay?
Brian, we're the Green Party, man. We don't care about political feasibility. It's not how we roll, man. That's why Chris isn't in office yet, or me.
We win elections locally here, So yes. Yeah.
Just a quick aside. I'm sorry. There's actually been one Green who's ever been elected to an office in Monroe County. 12, 15 years ago, we had a Green on the Brighton School Board for 2 terms. The problem was he's a realtor, and everybody thought he was a Republican. Nobody knew he was a Green. And school board runs usually in the suburbs is not partisan. You're not listed by political party. So everybody knew him. He's the great guy. Oh yeah, he's awesome. And everybody voted for him, not knowing he was a Green. They thought he was Republican because he was a realtor. He walks around in a suit all day. And he was on the board and nothing caught on fire. And, Brighton didn't go communist, and, everybody lived through it, but that's it.
So we should all just walk around in suits all day.
Undercover. Yes, that's.
Gotcha.
What about Fred has put into the chat locally, we could host a Guns for Toys drive or something like that. How do people respond to that?
I'm taking notes.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work with the Guns for Toys. It could have some success, but I going back to what you said, Linda, about the meeting people where they at, and to paraphrase kind of what you were saying, we got to kind of meet. I mean, if I'm somebody who's robbing people with my gun, do I want a bunch of toys to turn in my tool that I use to make money?
Looking at the time, and this doesn't have to be the end of a discussion. I mean, we can always do more, but I do like to do things. I like to do things. So not just talk about doing things. So I thought, looking at the time, I have 8:33. We don't have to have all the solutions today, and it doesn't have to be an action plan. But I just had a few ideas how to make this a little bit more, to include more people and to actually get things done, and to maybe convince politicians to do something. right? Other than try to stick a hole your finger in some, in something that's collapsing. So I had 3 ideas, and I'd like to just throw them out, and we can and trash them if they're total. Again, we're back into that no idea is a bad idea thing here. The one is the original thing I had said earlier, in terms of the Police Accountability Board Alliance. There was over 50 groups in town that sent representatives to these meetings for literally years, to work on getting this on the ballot as a referendum to vote for the Police Accountability Board, and even got worked into the law itself so that the Police Accountability Board Alliance has to nominate people for the board. So it's the alliance wasn't allowed to go away once it was voted on. It has to keep being an entity because as a part of the law, they have to nominate certain number of people for the board. An alliance of different groups could get together, but like Mike said, Save Rochester is a nonprofit, and it's really strict in terms of allowing nonprofits to advocate for legislation or something like that. So I don't know if an alliance would work. But I'm just throwing the idea out there because it carried a lot of weight of like 50 something groups all having their names on this list. And it was pretty impressive. The other thing would be having as many people who want to get involved in this as want, maybe some kind of peace bill of rights, a local one. Just have 10 things that need to be done to promote, to propagate, whatever word you want to use, peace in our community. And then the third one would be some kind of small c Congress, create a Congress where people would get together and create solutions and demand that the people who are in charge do them, like more research, taking care of children and parents, changing the way we sell guns, at least here in the community, at least in this local community, teaching more ways of dealing with conflict. Here's the list that we came up with. Oops, sorry. The list that we came up with. And that would be open to citizens of, I don't know, Monroe County, I guess. I don't know, however we want to do this. And that could be chaos. But it was just, again, no idea is a bad idea right now. So, I don't know. Citizens Assembly. Yeah, well, I've heard that before. I'm looking at the chat. I don't know. Does anybody have critique of any of those or ideas? Or it's a little late in the game to have a new person running for office. All the petitioning and stuff is done for this year, but these aren't local elections this year. For the most part, it's state, which isn't a bad thing. Like Jen's running for state assembly. And Jen, if your website's up, you should put it in the chat. So, just saying. What do folks think our next step should be?
Dave, I just want to say I did get a little excited when you keep bringing up the board with the accountability board. The idea of building a coalition, first among groups that share our values, and then using the political opportunity. I think there might be a political opportunity to build something. It sounds like, can I ask about the police accountability? Was that built recently in light of the increased pressure on police reform? Yeah.
So I gotta do math here. 5 is at least 5 years ago. So it all stemmed from a report compiled by 2 people who had some connections with some local groups, but they were just local activists, Ted Forsyth and Barbara Lacker-Ware. And they did this report going back 20 plus years of instances of police brutality in Rochester. And footnoted and just had all this evidence and put out this report. And that was the thing that drove all of these groups to come together and say, this is BS and we got to stop this. And there was one idea. We need a police accountability board. And that's what they lobbied everybody in city council and the mayor, and you had to go through all the political BS you would expect from the mayor and city council. And finally, the president of city council decided not to run for re-election. So she said, I'll get it through, because she knew she wasn't running for re-election. And she did the political wrangling that needed to be done so that it would be a referendum. And in 2019, it was on the ballot for people to vote for, that there would be a police accountability board would be created. And it said, see more details. And then on the ballot, it said you'd have to go look at somewhere else for all the details, because the law it's an extensive thing. It couldn't be on a ballot. And 75% voted yes in that year. And I know there were at least 2 of us Greens who were running, and it was on my platform. Every place I spoke in favor, of this. You should vote for this. If you vote for me or don't vote for me, you should vote for the PAB when you go to vote, when you go to vote in 2019. And it's still not fully functional. And that's because of the political wrangling. If you take a look at any of the news, it's pretty, there's already been 2 police accountability boards or something to that nature in Rochester decades ago, and they got attacked by both City Hall and the police union, and the same thing's happening now. So they just started taking complaints literally a week ago, and it was voted in 2019. So, and so that action from that alliance, which is still going, I was in the meeting last night, was about one thing, was to get this board going, to do something like we're talking about all of these ideas, or some of them. That's a lot of things. And I don't know how that would work in terms of an alliance. It's just something that I've experienced. And so I'm throwing it out as an idea. But like Mike was saying, Save Rochester is a nonprofit, and nonprofits are not allowed to specifically work toward certain, towards legislation. So I don't know how that would work. Churches aren't supposed to either. And we have a lot of church groups in the PABA, in the Alliance. So I'm not sure how that would work. But I don't know. Oh, Anisha, goodbye. Don't be a stranger. She left. Okay. Well, I have her email. I'll find her. So yeah, I don't know how the technicalities of how that would work for nonprofits to be able to do something like that.
Experience with doing these sort of things. I've been to a city council meeting or something, but I am very encouraged. I want to say thank you to Dave, as well as the Green Party, everyone who attended in the Green Party of Rochester. This was really informative and heartening. I think feeling a lot better.
I just like to say I like the Peace Bill of Rights. I like anything that you propose that I'm like, I can steal these ideas and implement them where I live.
Where do you guys live?
We're in California. I had no idea this was going to be a Rochester.
Oh, that's funny.
Focus.
I'm a student in Eastern Washington, so the political landscape might look a little bit closer. We're an island of blue, in lots of red districts. It's pretty pro gun out there, but it's a pretty blue state. But yeah, I mean there's some ideas there that I think could take purchase. In the right setting, just kind of getting the right ears right, and maybe a little bit of luck. So it's happened before, and you just keep trying, right?
Oh yeah.
So we're gonna. I think that's it. We're gonna sign off. But thank you so much for
Oh, thanks for coming. So we don't seem to have any groundswell toward any particular thing. Do we need to try to get folks together again, or this will be online, this recording? In fact, I should probably just stop recording now.